I was always a very introspective child. I was always in my head, always trying to figure out, what was going on with people around me, what was going on with family members, with friends. I was always the person that people came to, at school when they had a problem. Yeah, I was always the person that people came to speak to. When people had something private going on that even they weren't comfortable telling maybe their friends, they would come to me, I think, because people knew that I was good at keeping secrets, that I was a good listener, that I was good at empathizing and connecting with folks, that I wouldn't judge them. And so I had all sorts of folks, sometimes people that wouldn't speak to me most of the time, and suddenly out of nowhere they would come into a conversation with me, and I would know more about them than most people in their lives knew about them. So there was always part of me that was just really always very curious about life, very curious about people, about what drove them, about what made them tick, about just even the suffering, and that was true even as teenagers. There's a lot of angst in being a teenager, and that was always something that interested me, is why people were so unhappy, why people were so lost, why people were getting high or drunk or needed to escape reality in some way. But I felt like to really understand myself, to really help others, that I needed to go towards therapy. And there was, for a short while, I thought about becoming a lawyer, but I was actually afraid that I might just lose myself and lose what had meaning to me in my life, so I decided to go towards psychology and psychotherapy. I worked with drug users, alcoholics. I did quite a bit of domestic violence and anger management therapy, working with people who had not only some psychological struggles but also socioeconomic, and they were stuck in the system. And that was, these were not the easiest folks to work with, but I figured that if I could work with these folks, I could work with anybody. I was really open to just experience something different. I was ready to take a break from my practice and maybe even decide what kind of therapist I wanted to go, and how I wanted to really start helping people in a way that I felt would be not just surface change, but some kind of deep change. And I needed to have time to really put everything that I had learned and come to realize over the last few years working with folks clearly in my mind and maybe clearly in paper. And so at that point my husband and I decided to move to Colorado, which is very different from Florida, obviously. We decided to go in the exact opposite and just be in the mountains. And transitions are funny like that. Transitions are always a time where the soil gets moved and things are allowed to breathe that maybe were not allowed to breathe at a different time, and seeds that had been sown suddenly start sprouting. It's always been a dream of me to be an author, to be a writer in some way. And I think partially it's because I've always had a love affair with books. They've always been my best friends in many ways. Since, as I mentioned earlier, I was always a shy, introspective, quiet child. And so my biggest adventures were always the one I read in books. Whether it's novels or philosophical books or spiritual books, my greatest teachers have been books in many ways. All my discoveries about who I am, what I am, who I want to be as a human being, how I want to live my life, in many ways have started with authors questioning me, like asking pertinent questions in books. And then suddenly in, I want to say maybe June or July of 2013, we'd been in Colorado maybe 3 months. We were finally just starting to get settled. The boxes were empty, things were put away, and I decided it was time to start writing this book. And in 2 months, the first draft was basically written. It was almost like the words just flowed. It was clear. and I was able to put things down that I had not been able to. I think in many ways I was trying to control what I was going to say rather than just say it. The book, you know, is kind of divided in two aspects. On one aspect of it is very theoretical, very philosophical, where I kind of explain where this false persona that we have identified with, which I call the imaginary self. All these wounds, our personality. And then the other aspect of it is really an experiential journey. Because to understand this, to know this intellectually, will only take you so far. So there's a lot of exercises in the book, there's a lot of guided meditations, a lot of explorations that I go through with the reader, which are explorations I've done with my own clients and with myself to help discover who it is that we are truly at core in essence. The Zen master of the family. They really know how to be in this moment and enjoy what's happening right now, and thank you. That's very kind. They know how to love. You know, and actually, you know, this is something I mentioned in my book, but if you ever doubt that you are loved and lovable, all you need to do is surround yourself with an animal, with a pet. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of wounds or what kind of negative sides you think you have or what kind of horrible person you think you have. Your dog doesn't give a shit.